Alright, a very good morning, Twitch fans from Captain Nabs. Welcome back into the flight deck once again. We are back at Nice on the Mediterranean coast of France here. We are getting ready for another flight in the pilot's life career. It's the season finale of Season 4. We're going to be taking this bird from Nice all the way back to home base in Montreal, and with that, Season 4 will be done. And we'll talk more about what we might do next later on in the stream. But as you can see, we're here at the airport. The fuel truck has just arrived to start fueling us. We're going to need about 50 tons of fuel just to get there today, so it's going to take a little while for them to get that much fuel delivered. So that's why I get them started before even the stream starts now, just to make sure that we have a chance to get it done on time. And we're getting background audio repeating there, but we don't need that. There we go. Yeah, so without further ado, we're going to hop in the flight deck because we got a good almost 8-hour flight across the pond ahead of us. Let's get this party started. And let's start with our FS2 crew. Launch that up. And just quickly check out our configuration speed. Configuration screen. Stop talking to me. And just make sure I'm happy with everything here. Yeah, okay, we're not going to use the pushback anyways, so yeah, so let's go ahead and run the pre-flights.
Captain. How are you today?
I am good. So he's going to do the honors of getting us started here. He's going to fire up the airplane here in a second. The jet bridge is already attached. While he's quickly firing up the airplane, let's just make sure we do have our flight plan for today. Transat 649, there it is. Let's also just pull up some documents while he's doing this. Make sure we have what we need here. I believe this is what we need. I believe that's all we need, I think. And just checking the weather here in Nice for the day, and its winds are calm. So, yeah. Actually, while I think about it here, if I can be 100% honest, I started this stream already once. Earlier this week, I tried to do this stream, and as the A330 likes to do to me, it crashed. About an hour into the stream, give or take. It was very frustrating. If it happens again today, I'm going to probably give up on the idea of streaming this flight back and just... I have a couple of other ideas, but anyways. Let's see here. They are planning departure 4, right? What was I looking for? I was looking for NOTAMs. Because when I did this last 4 right was closed now. So let's see here if it's still listed as being closed here. Cranes, there it is. 4 right, 2 left is still listed as closed, which means it's 4 left for departure for sure. Alright, so it looked like you got the power on, buddy. You go ahead and do that walk around, why don't you? And I will make sure that... Sorry, guys. Just need to crane my head just a little further up here just to get this to work. No. Sometimes track IR is good. Sometimes it just doesn't function as well as it should. And... 1 second. Not that button. That button. There we go. There, turn the sensitivity down on my track IR a little bit because I do find it does get very sensitive. Fuel pumps on. And while I'm flowing through the overhead panel really quickly, let's just test the fire on the APU, and the engines should hear it, should get that red low. ICAS message as well. Alright, external power is on, and the one thing he never does... Wow, just... I don't know what's going on here, but this is like the worst angle right here. There we go. He never turns on any of the lights that we need. Need them or not, he never turns anything on here. Alright, so we got the electronic signs on, we got the emergency lights armed, and we got the nav lights on. He's fueling right now, which means we cannot... I believe he's fueling out there. He should be still fueling. Well, we can check. Refuel in progress. There it is. We can't move anyways until he does that, so... there we go. Go ahead and do the walk around, buddy.
Okay, I'm out for the walk around.
Thank you. Alright, yeah, so we're going to go ahead and hop into the FMS here, because that is the meat and potatoes of what we got to do to set up here. And, oh, not what I meant to do. And we're going to use our flight plan here to set up. We're going to use our FMS here to set up. And we're also going to put it on our secondary screen here. There we go, because I do like to show you guys what I'm doing, and it's just such an easier input, especially when you're doing a lot of inputting. So when you initially start up here, especially, this is where this really becomes... okay, thank you. It really becomes very useful, handy, is when you're doing the startup and you're putting in a lot of information in a very short order. So there's the entire flight plan. I could put it in, or I can go and do it manually. And I think today we got time while we're fueling. We're going to go ahead and put in the whole flight plan manually. I think I said this before. It's not a particularly realistic function. Most companies, when they if they have the option of putting in the flight plan, they want you to put in the flight plan using the ACARs system, because it's more reliable. That's the real primary reason. It's less prone to input errors. It's not to say that it's 100% reliable, that an error could never creep in, but it takes a lot of the input errors out. And sometimes it can be very subtle input errors that can cause an important change, as many pilots have found out the hard way over the years. You know, you just get one waypoint wrong, you reverse the letters in one waypoint, and it may be a valid name that still exists somewhere. But you may not right away realize that it's out of whack. I know one time I did a flight, and there's a whole bunch of RNAV coordinate-based fixes now in North America that all start with K and then have 2 numbers and then 2 letters. Yeah, I think it's 2 numbers and 2 letters, and it's like a grid of them all around the country, so you could swap the numbers back and forth very easily and have it be another grid location that may or may not be close to where you want to be, but you may not realize it until you start to make a turn in the wrong direction if you're not paying close enough attention. Now, mind you, should be paying attention, but it's very easy for these errors to enter. That's kind of my point. So importing it from the ACAR system is generally considered to be more reliable, although it's then verified by the pilots against the routing that's planned. Stop sticking to me there. Just go down one page. There's the route there. Alright, so as I said, we're going to plan departure 4 left, because that's the only one that's open. It's the Badru 6 Alpha. There it is, Badru 6 Alpha. Alright, and that takes us all the way down to Badru, hopefully. And then from Badru, I believe we have a bunch of airways. Yes, we do. So we'll go and select Badru and hit airways. And then we can type in our airways, UM616. And if you can't read it on the chart here, you can also follow along at the bottom of the screen. I've got the whole thing written out there for the flight tracking overlay. As far as the intersection Lurga, UT183 to Degex. UT183 as far as Degex, UN490 to BRAD, UN490 to 490 to BRAD. The nice thing about using airways is it is a little bit more reliable in terms of preventing errors. UN512 to ADRAD.
Everything looks good.
Thank you. ADRAD. Because if you get an error, if you get a fix wrong in an airway, it's going to tell you right away. It's going to say that's not recognized as a valid airway or a valid point along that airway. So you're going to find out right away if you make a mistake in that realm. Whereas when you do in North America now, mostly it's point-to-point flight plans, unless you're on specific routes that usually involve arrivals to major airports that have very systematic points, but you know, very prescribed arrival routes. But otherwise, in North America, it's very much random routing a lot of the time. The airway system has become, I won't say redundant, but it has been somewhat rendered redundant. Whereas in N521, N512, and N521, wow, back to back. just to make it that much more confusing, to VRATKA. Yeah, in Europe it's almost all composed of airways, but in North America it's the opposite. It's very few airways. Okay, so there's VRATKA. Then we go direct to Dara, and then we start our oceanic crossing. Today we're not on a NAT track. I looked at the NAT track. I actually did the analysis and the flight planning myself directly for this. And today's NAT track is just too far south. It added almost 10% to the mileage, and we didn't really get that out of the headwinds that much. Definitely not enough. I crunched the numbers, and it would have been about 30 minutes more to take the NAT track because it's so far south, and therefore it's a longer route. So we're better off doing a random route because we're generally, you know, Montreal's a, relatively speaking, northern airport in North America. Certainly out of all the major airports in North America, it's a relatively northern airport. Oops. Somehow I missed some characters there. 5350 north. So the NATs, especially when there's only one NAT right now, or they're really trying to sort of pick routes that are going to be optimal for as many flights as possible, which means generally favoring America because there's more airports in America, and the Canadians often, it's too far south as often as not for our airports, which is the case today. So hence I have I partially generated this route and partially put it in myself. I generated it, but then I made a few adjustments to make it a little bit more useful. Alright, so then we're going to go ahead and do the arrival, which is directly after Beauce. We're going to plan for 2-4 left in Montreal on the Ombre arrival. There it is, Ombre 6. And it's going to be the Beauce transition, which is VLV. And that's it. The flight plan is in. It didn't take me that long. I think they're still fueling, so I think that's a good sign that it didn't take me too long to do it. And just noticing the level here on my mic is quite high, so I just adjusted that. I'm very sorry, guys, if that was a little bit distorted. I didn't realize I haven't adjusted it lately, so maybe by accident I did. Ran the mouse over it and moved the scroll wheel if possible, but okay. Got the flight plan in. We can go back to the init and go to page 2 and do the page 2 parts. And let's just check up on this fuel guy here. Actually, let's just finish this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to request catering service right now because it'll come while he's fueling. And in a minute, we're going to request boarding, I think. There we go.
Hey, Captain. The agents want to start sending people out. Can we start boarding?
Yes.
Okay. I'll let them know.
There we go. Okay, so boarding. Oh, I need to specify the number of people to board, which is also here in the flight plan. We'll get back to the init page in a second here. Apparently we have a high-density seating A330 because they have us planned at 335 passengers, but the Aerosoft Max is 300, so that's what we're going with. We'll put in 3 tons of cargo. And here comes the boarding of 300 people. We don't need to undock the jetway. The jetway's already docked, people. Stick with it. Alright, and actually it's good that we brought this page up. This is perfectly timed because I need the ZFW, which is on this page as well. Right up here, it's 155.5. And our ZFW CFG is 26, as it always is in this airplane. It never changes. That's one thing that never seems to change in this airplane. Alright, they're almost done the fueling, actually. It's doing pretty good. They're at 43, almost 44 tons out of 55, so that's getting very close now. Automatically calculate all the rest of the numbers, our alternate and reserve fuel and all that, so our init is almost done, and the last thing we have to do is our performance, which basically we have to specify a flap setting. Debating between flap 1 and flap 2. We'll go with flap 2 because she's going to be a heavy bird with 55 tons of fuel and a full bus of 300 people. She's going to be a heavy bird, so we'll do the flap 2 departure today. Off of 4 left, it's also a little bit of a shorter runway, so the flap 2 will work to our advantage, and that's it. The FMS is set up, and we're ready to go on that aspect of the flight. Alright, that's all good there. So the fueling should be almost done. Here comes the catering trucks. Fueling's going to be done in probably within the next 5 minutes, and then they'll start boarding the baggage, and we'll be able to start getting underway on this, because we still got a few more things to do in the flight deck, but we're getting very close. Alright, I don't have the sheet. I don't think we have any ATC. I don't believe. I don't see anybody. I'm just doing a quick VAT spy check here as well. I don't see anybody, no. We got some nearby, but it's unfortunately there's in Switzerland. It's the Paris control, which we probably won't fly through, and the London control, which we won't fly through. So we actually have no ATC for this. I was kind of expecting, because it's a Saturday, that we might get some ATC, but I guess the answer is no. All right. Yeah, so we did the overhead panel, guidance panel here. So let's get the auto thrust system armed. And I honestly cannot remember what we got as an initial climb altitude from our controller. We actually did have a controller on when I started this stream the first time around. We did actually have a controller. Let's see if it's on the chart here as a top altitude. No, this is not. They don't give a top altitude. So I'm just going to put 10,000 as our initial climb altitude. And, yeah. No, I don't want to do that. Let's see here. QNH 1028. Ooh, a little bit of high pressure today. There it is, 1028 set across the board. There we go. Alright, so now we've got top altitude selected with 3 dots for manage mode. Auto thrust is armed. We got constraints highlighted. I think we got just about everything ready to go there. He is so close to finishing the fueling. They're going to start the boarding very soon here. I notice my controls are all out of whack here. So let's just checking those to make sure they're both functional. Spoiler is functional. Unfortunately, I'm starting to get noise at the bottom end of my throttle quadrant here. Just a very extreme. And sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not. Thrust flap lever is also there, even though our FS2 crew should operate the flaps completely. Good to check that it's there. Let's make sure we're on Unicom 22.8. Let's make sure we got 2000 in the transponder. We do. And I think we're just about ready to get going here. So let's ask. Are you ready for the departure briefing? Are you ready for the takeoff briefing?
Ready?
Depends on the SOP, departure or takeoff. Okay, let's see here. Today we are so emergencies. Emergencies are as previously briefed, we'll say, on the last leg. The exception that the emergency turn off of runway 4 right. There are mountains off the end of 4 right. This is 4 right here. There's some good mountains off there. So in the event of an emergency, it's going to be an immediate right turn at 400 feet to a heading of, I don't even know what heading will do it, but we'll say probably to a heading of at least 120, maybe even 150. We'll make it a solid 90-degree turn to the right. So we'll say right turn to a heading of 150. That'll take us out over the Mediterranean, and then we will not have to worry about terrain for quite some time. So today we're parked here at gate 50. For runway 4 left is a really super short taxi. We basically just go down the apron here on Tango and around Alpha 1 for the threshold of runway 4 left. And hotspot 1, I'll check it in a second. I'm pretty sure I know what it says because I checked this earlier. None of these notes affect that particular taxi route. So hotspot 1, I believe, is just to make sure that we're aware. Actually, I'm not sure what hotspot 1 is. Let's go and check it properly here. So let's put in, come on, LFMN. Let's put that in. And Airport info takeoff minimums usually includes hotspots. Hotspot 1, taxiway crossing runway. In this case, we're not going to cross the runway because the runway we're crossing is actually the departure runway. So we're going to stop there and take off. But nevertheless, always good to check those hotspots. Make sure that you understand what they are, what the threat is, and how to mitigate them. So in this case, there is no threat because we're not going to cross that runway. Normally, I believe that 4 right is always the departure runway because it's the slightly longer runway, slightly farther away from the city, but it's closed for construction, or I don't know what. I don't know why it's closed. It doesn't specify. It just says it's closed. So we're going to go with it. The Voyager 6 Alpha departures. An RNAV departure on 10-3 Foxtrot effective the 1st of March of 2018. RNAV 1 GNSS or DDI required, and SIDs are also noise abatement procedures until reaching 2000. Adopt noise abatement configuration and climb settings according to operational conditions. Yes. We did this last time. See, I messed with this last time, and I don't know. I hate this airplane because I worry about it. It is possible to set a different acceleration altitude. Acceleration altitude by default is 1,000 feet in this FMS. You could set it to a higher one. They want you to set it 2,000. I'm going to do it manually using the guidance panel. So when we reach 1,000 feet, I'm going to make sure to pull the speed out and keep us going at the same speed because I don't know. I don't know what caused the crash last time, but I'm going to try something different. The routing is fairly straightforward. It's initially heading 043 till, which is normally heading to 420 feet, then a climbing right turn track 138 until we get to 8 DME from NIZ, then to MN044. We cross it at a max to 10 knots. And then we cross Nice at or above 6,000, Amiro, and Bodru. So let's just make sure that all that is in our FMS. I'm just going to pull it up here. And we can just go through that together. So at 412 feet, yes, course 136 until we get Nice 08, and then it's a right turn to MN044, then a right turn to Nice. It's at or above 6,000. Looks like we're going to cross at about 9,000. Amiro and Bodru, and that's it. Our flight plan is in the system correctly. Terrain, there is lots of high terrain north of the airport, up to 10,700 feet to clear it, so we need to make sure that we do make that right turn promptly. One thing I will note as well, last time we got a terrain warning on takeoff. As soon as we rotated and started climbing, we started getting terrain warnings because there is high terrain just like 5 miles off the end of the runway, and we were proceeding to it pretty quickly. Even though the turn is in the FMS, the EGPWS system does not know what's programmed into the FMS. It just simply looks at the current aircraft heading, current aircraft speed, and says there's terrain ahead and starts making callouts. It doesn't know that we're going to turn. So if you hear the terrain, terrain call out on departure, that is not unexpected, and we just have to continue to make the turn that is part of the SID in order to avoid the terrain. Weather is a beautiful day here. Love it. Looks really nice. Operational. I don't have too much to say for the operational. There's nothing broken on the airplane. NOTAMs, we did note that one NOTAM that the runway is closed here. Stands, a bunch of stands and taxiways closed as well. We looked at that. That doesn't affect our taxi route. We just need Tango and Alpha 1. So a bunch of stuff is being closed, I guess. I guess like so many other places, they're doing a lot of construction work right now. Trying to get caught up on all sorts of infrastructure projects. Wall traffic levels are low, and so many airports have been doing that lately and closing a lot of extra runways because they can, and they can get the work done that they're doing faster. Not that they have the money to do it because all the airports are running out of money, but yeah, I don't see anything in there that affects our departure at all. And noise abatement's built into the SID. And immediate return. We're going to be very heavy for an immediate return. We'll probably have to dump fuel in order to get in order to bring the landing weight down. And that's all I've got. Any questions?
Okay, that's checked and no questions.
Very good. All right, the baggage train's just arrived. Well, at least the fueling is done. We do have our 55 tons on board. Let's go ahead and start that APU. So as soon as those guys are done, we're ready to go. And we just probably have about 5 minutes of loading that baggage, and we're all good to go. Yeah, what was I going to say? Something just popped into my head while I was just finishing up that briefing there. And I've already forgotten what it was. Something related to all that construction that's going on at so many airports. We did receive a notification actually at my company that from Montreal that this winter 6 right 24 24 right 6 left is going to be closed for the entire winter. It's going to be a single runway airport for the winter, and for the summer it's been okay. Traffic levels at Montreal have been fairly light overall, so hasn't been crucial for the fact that this has been closed. But winter, it can be a whole different, having only one runway at an airport, it could be a whole different operation because you need to close the runway periodically to do snow removal and everything. And if you don't have an extra runway to switch to, the airport grinds to a halt. Literally no operations during the snow removal. So only having one runway will have a real impact on Montreal during any major snow events. And it's unfortunate. The only thing that's working to their advantage is, of course, the lack of traffic. That's what I was going to talk about, the lack of traffic at these airports, because some of these airports also, their revenue is based on, often as not, the number of flights. Airlines often pay per flight for various services at the airport, and also the number of passengers. Most airports charge usually an airport improvement fee or something per passenger that uses the airport. So when you have all these things have fallen by 90%, all of a sudden the revenue streams are way down. And yes, you can cut some costs, you can cut some staffing, you can close some things, but a lot of stuff is fixed at an airport. Unless you can close an entire concourse, you can't really reduce the spending on things like electricity and air conditioning or heating, or a lot of utility stuff is kind of fixed by the size of these buildings. You can't really cut them down too easily. So airports are really struggling to find diverse new revenue streams. Some airports have just become parking lots. They have almost no traffic, and as a result, they are able to park tons of airplanes at their various gates permanently, and provide parking to these airlines that are not able to operate these planes and need a place to park them. So that's a revenue stream that some airports have exercised lately, is just literally becoming aircraft parking lots. And you park a handful of heavies at an airport, with some gates that are not being used. There's some airports have closed entire concourses. I can think in Toronto that the entire concourse where most of the small RJs used to operate in Terminal 1, the transborder flights, that whole concourse is closed because there's no need for it. All the flights can be consolidated at a much smaller number of gates. And then you can reduce a lot of the cost of maintaining that whole area. Then you don't even need to send janitors down there. You don't need to even keep the lights on. It's a whole big area that's been cut off to save some money. I'm sure it's not nearly enough, but I mean, it makes a difference. But yeah, one that I thought was interesting, I read apparently in Toronto as well, what the airport authority is going to do to make money is they've taken their gigantic parking garage, they've isolated a huge portion of it, and what they're going to do is they're going to turn it into a holiday-themed drive-through. So they're going to put up lights and decorations and all sorts of crazy stuff in the parking garage, and charge $45 a car for people to drive through and see some drive-through Christmas lights, almost like a virtual Christmas party kind of thing, which is suddenly becoming a big thing. I've seen all sorts of advertisements. A whole bunch of different organizations that are, I guess, having trouble making ends meet are suddenly creating all these drive-through holiday themed extravaganzas. Try and create revenue streams. I've seen a golf course do it. I've seen a warehouse do it. And all of a sudden, all these places are starting to do it. So the airports are also trying to get in on this because it's a revenue stream, and they need all the revenue streams they can get. And it's a bit sad that it's come to that. Not what these parking garages were originally intended for. They were, and that's on top of, in Toronto, the staff is parking in the parking garage instead of the distant staff parking lot now, because to get from the staff parking lot to the terminals, you used to have to take a little train back and forth, and the trouble with that is that it puts everyone who works in the terminal in very close quarters. Not a particularly large train, you know, goes every 7 or 8 minutes or whatever, but there's a lot of staff, so it was always, you know, you'd be sitting in a small little compartment that was definitely standing room only. And that's not good in the COVID era, so they actually authorized, at least temporarily, all staff to park in the terminal parking garages, because of the other thing is that nobody else is parking there. There's no passengers. There's so few passengers that letting all the staff park there has only used up a fraction of the parking garages. So they still have enough room, even with all that, to run this holiday extravaganza. Alright, I guess we could do one thing while all these guys are almost done loading. So our APU is online, and let's put on the APU bleed so I don't forget. Cockpit to ground.
Go ahead.
Please disconnect external power.
Roger, disconnecting the GPU.
Alright, so they'll get rid of the GPU, and then we'll be ready to go here. We are just about ready to go. We're about a couple minutes away from blasting off here. And as I look around out here, sometimes it's just so disappointing to get back into the P3D environment.
Captain, the GPU is now disconnected.
Thank you. And it's not at the airport. This is JustSim's Nice, and it's a well-done airport. There's a few little glitchy things here going on just from this angle that I'm looking at it from. But like overall, very well detailed. The ground markings there's a lot of detail there. There's about 100 different ways you could stack an airplane at this one gate. But when you look in the distance, I mean, and it looks like it's absolutely beautiful terrain here. Lots of mountains, right near the water here. You know, the mountains literally just fall into the sea. But the land class and the texturing, and this is, you know, with Orbex's global vector. Is this open land class? No, I think I only have open land class for North America. I don't believe I have it for Europe, and I'm not going to be getting it now because now we've moved into the Microsoft Flight Simulator era, and it looks so much better. It's amazing the difference that satellite imagery that they have makes, and that's what it is. It comes down to it. It's a satellite imagery. The other day I was doing a flight and happened to accidentally flip off. No, I didn't flip it off. What happened was the internet went down, and the sim reverted back to its default scenery, the default scenery that's loaded with your sim with that download and not streamed from the Bing servers. And the quality of that default land class system is not all that much better than what's in P3D. It's a little bit better. It's a little bit more detailed, but you could still very much see the repetition. It was very generic looking. You could tell that it was just a default land class. And I just had never really thought about what was lying underneath all that satellite data before. And it did not look a whole lot better than P3D. It runs better. It runs at a higher frame rate still, but it's not all that much better in terms of just what the default scenery is. Without that satellite data streaming turned on, and if that ever gets turned off, the whole product will become very, very sad. Anyways, let's not get into that, because let's get out of here. We're fully boarded. Thump, 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 thump.
Hello, Captain. The passenger boarding is complete. And when you're ready, I have the load seat for you.
Thank you.
Have a safe flight.
Go ahead.
Alright guys, everyone's seated. We're all buttoned up and ready to go in the back.
Alright, Captain. We are removing the jetway now.
There goes the jetway. Thank you.
Locking gear. If you need anything, just let me know.
Before start checklist to the line.
Before start checklist, down to the line. Cockpit prep.
Complete.
Completed. Gears, pins, and covers.
Removed.
Signs.
I'm just going to do a quick edit here. That's good.
Departure check completed. Bypass pin inserted.
On.
Sparking brakes.
ADIRS.
Nav.
Fuel quantity.
55 tons.
Takeoff data.
Set.
Paroref.
1028 set.
1028. Cross-checked. Set. Okay, before start checklist completed to the line.
Release sparking brakes.
Alright, before we get going here, the one thing I want to check is just make sure that this is going to start its flight automatically. It looks like it is. I've got the aircraft here, and yeah, that looks like we're ready to start that. So, before start procedures.
Okay.
Release sparking brakes.
Just a second. Before start checklist below the line. Below the line.
Before start checklist below the line. Windows and doors.
Closed.
Closed. Beacon.
On.
Thrust levers.
Idle.
Parking brake.
Released.
Before start checklist complete.
All engines clear. Start at will.
Thank you. Starting engine 2. Alright, we got N3. I'm just going to check one more time on VATSIM, make sure nobody's showed up here at all, but I don't believe anybody has. Doesn't look like it, so. Doesn't want to be pushing accidentally when there's, you know, a controller online. But I don't think that's the case here. Alright, looks like we got good light off there. Engine parameters are stabilizing. Everything looks good. Starting engine 1.
Set parking brakes. Waiting
Brake
your
is set.
confirmation for a good engine start.
And everything's looking pretty stable there. We're going to go ahead and call it good engine start there. Yeah. Alright, and here he comes. Pull the pin and disconnect the tow bar. We're just about ready to get underway here.
Unlocking gear.
One nice thing about flying westbound as opposed to eastbound, which I did in my last flight, is that we should be daylight for the whole flight. Because as we go west, of course, we're chasing the sun. When I came east, we actually took off before the sun rose, and we landed pretty much at sunset on a 7-hour flight. Which is a sad side effect of the time of year where it's getting to be the shortest days of the year. So trying to keep up with that sunlight is definitely helpful. So this will be a nice all daytime flight, but we couldn't have started much later than this. This is quite early for me in my local time zone, but if we started much later, we would not be landing before the sunset. We have about a 2-hour window, I think, today to play with, maybe 3 hours, but this works out best anyways for me. There they go.
Left is clear, right is clear.
Cockpit to ground.
Go ahead.
You're clear to disconnect and go to hand signals. You were clear to disconnect and go to hand signals.
Have a safe flight.
After start procedures.
Check.
APU bleed.
Flaps to.
And APU off. And engine start, switch to normal. Alright, and they're good. They're done with us. After start checklist.
Okay, after start checklist. Anti-ice.
Off.
ECAM status.
Checked.
Pitch trim.
Four upset.
Rudder trim.
0.
After start checklist complete.
Flight control check.
Ready. Full down.
Wait, what's going on here? Why is it full down? For crying out loud. Okay, guys, hold on.
Checked. Full left. Full right. Neutral. Full left. Full right. Neutral.
Okay, so something's going weird here. Guys, give me 1 second. Alright, so I ran a quick... calibration of my elevators. That's weird. They were just back to normal, and then they just... Very strange. Okay, this airplane really wants to roll on its own with just the parking brake. It looks like the elevators are full down. My control column's neutral. 1 more second, guys, because it worked, and then it stopped working again. Okay. Well, it may work, and we may end up being a flaming wreckage because it's showing correctly. I'm beginning to think this is an Aerosoft glitch again because it's showing correctly in my calibration device as being centered. So I think something's not transmitting to this aircraft properly. We're gonna go and hope it doesn't pitch down like crazy when we try to rotate.
Okay, thanks for letting me know. Captain, the captain is secure.
Thank you. Clear on the left.
Clear on the right.
What is going on here? Okay, I hear ya. We don't have takeoff power yet. Oh. The flaps retracted themselves because I was playing with the calibration. Lord. But I didn't even advance the power that far. Jeez. Sets that off just like that. Okay. Before takeoff, checklist down to the line.
Before takeoff checklist down to the line. Flight controls.
Checked.
Checked.
And look, now they're
Flight
correct.
instruments.
Weird. Really
Checked.
weird. Checked. Checked.
Checked. Briefing.
Confirmed.
Flap setting.
Config 2.
Config 2. V1, VR, V2 flex temp.
V1 138, VR 138, V2 140. Flex temp is 36 degrees. Flex temp is 36 degrees.
V1 is 138. V rotate is 1, 3, 8. V2 is 1, 4, 6. And for the flex temp, we have 3, 6 degrees. ATC.
Set.
ECAM memo.
Takeoff, no blue.
Before takeoff checklist complete to the line.
I hope all these glitches do not bode ill for the rest of the flight. Ah well, we're going to give it a try here and see what happens. Before takeoff checklist below the line.
Before takeoff checklist below the line. Cabin crew.
Cabin crew seats for departure. Advised.
TCAS.
TARA.
Engine mode selector.
Norm.
PAX.
On.
Okay, before takeoff checklist is complete.
Clear on the left. Clear on the right. Nice traffic, Transat 649 is taking position runway 4 left for departure on the Baudru 6 Alpha departure. Alright, we got all the lights on except for the landing lights. We'll just get this lined up. We'll turn those on. Let's just make sure as well. So we look a little weird about this. I don't know, maybe not.
Checked.
But there's all that terrain out the end of the runway that I told you about. Hence we have to make the turn right away as soon as we depart, 400 feet. And we will probably get the terrain warnings. We're just going to disregard them because we know that why they're there. We know we turn out here over towards the open ocean. Lights on. Just check, make sure this is tracking. There's the end flight button, so it is tracking. Alright, here we go again. Takeoff. Check thrust. Check thrust.
Thrust set. knots.
Checked.
V1. Rotate. Positive rate.
Gear up.
Gear up.
Before we get to 1,000 feet, and pull the manual speed.
Checked. Gear up.
We're going to bring it back to climb power, but we're not going to increase speed above V2 yet until we reach 2,000 feet. She climbs like a dog, though. Autopilot 1 on.
Autopilot 1 on.
Flaps 1.
Flaps 1.
Takes a little while to accelerate to that flap, too. Flaps up.
Flap 0.
After takeoff, checklist down to the line.
After takeoff checklist, down the line. Landing gear.
Up.
Flaps.
Retracted.
Packs.
On.
After takeoff checklist completed, to the line.
Checked. We got that 210 speed limit there, so we got to keep going. So the MN-044, yes, there it is. Now the speed's going to pick up. Now we're up to speed 250, and we're accelerating. Cancel last command.
Check.
Gonna set our 360 there for our cruise. I'm 90% certain our cruise is 360. Just really quickly check it here. Yes, 360. Yep. Alright, now we're moving. Turning back towards Nice. Got to cross Nice at about 6,000. We're already at 46. With almost 10 miles to go. Shouldn't be too much of a difficulty to make that 6,000 above Nice. And then even higher. Just keep that climb going. We should be able to clear these mountains fairly well. Zoom him out one notch there and see what the terrain we get is over here on this side here. 5,400 within 20 miles, so that's fine. We're already above that. There's the 6,000 for Nice, and we do have to transition. After takeoff checklist below the line.
After takeoff checklist, below the line. Aero ref.
Standard set.
Standard set. After takeoff checklist is complete.
And there we go. We're underway. Why? It takes a little while to get these flights going, but I can imagine what beautiful scenery this is in the real world. We should come and do this flight again in Microsoft Flight Simulator once we get some good airplanes. Definitely some higher terrain up there. Climb, baby, climb. There's Nice at about 6,000. We're turning towards those mountains. Haven't quite reached, I think, a high enough altitude to quite clear them yet if you look far enough afield. Yeah, there we go. So if we go... I can even go terrain on this one here. Terrain on here. We have some 9,300 foot terrain at the far extremities of our 20, is it 20 miles, 40 miles? That's 40 miles. So about 40 miles away we have some 9,000 foot mountains over there, which we're already just clearing. And we're about to hit 10,000, and actually it's not too bad this direction. The terrain's a lot lower than over there, where the Alps definitely climb a little higher. Nevertheless, it's still always unnerving to be flying towards the mountains until you're really quite certain that you're going to have the vertical flight path you need to get over them. Now we're going to stop climbing and accelerate to our 320 knot climb speed, which is again going to unnerve me for a minute or two here. It's going to take us a minute to get up there. This big beast is heavy today. She's just lumbering up into the sky. Alright, so we got our cruise altitude set. Just got to accelerate. There we go. We got almost 300 knots now. Highest terrain is 9,300, so as long as we start climbing here, we're going to clear it all. Here we go. Flying that red line. 320 knots here. 10 knots below the red line. But there we go. We're underway. Farewell, Nice. Au revoir, France, and bonjour, Montreal in about just under 8 hours. Do a quick little progress check here. So we're looking for a flight plan. Show me the bottom line here. 1901 looks like in Montreal with 12.3 in the tanks. And we definitely need less than that to get to, let's see here. To go to Ottawa, we need under 6, so we're going to have at least an extra 6 tons of fuel. Now, mind you, this is without any winds. Normally I put in the winds. I don't think I'm going to today because I'm frankly, this airplane just scares me a little bit. I'm always worried that something I'm going to do is going to make it want to crash. It's going to crash the sim. I'm going to try and put on a calculation, and it's going to be just too much for the FMS. It's going to crash the sim. And it's very frustrating. Very frustrating because it's a fun airplane to fly. You know, it's got some great range. It's got a fun set of avionics that I'm really enjoying, but just that underlying nagging worry that something I'm going to do is going to crash the sim makes me play it extremely safe with this airplane and not really want to do anything too outlandish if I can avoid it. And that's probably going to impact my choice of what to do next in terms of my Twitch streaming here and a pilot's life. But we'll talk about that a little bit more when we get up to cruise here. Not doing too badly here, 16,000 now. I think we've cleared most of the Alps at this point. You can see the horizon beyond your mountains, you know you've cleared them. But to fly this in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2, it's just absolutely beautiful to look at some of this terrain. And it's not perfect. Sometimes, you know, when you end up with a steep valley with a hill with a road cut through it, it often ends up looking like the road is painted sideways onto the hill. It's just the nature of what the AI is doing. But the overall impacts in Microsoft Flight Simulator is worlds above where they are with the P3D platform. And it's only going to get better, I hope, I think, as they fine-tune it even more, as people point out all the mistakes that have been made in the system. They'll come at it again and again, and they'll manage to improve it probably further and further. And there's 18,000. We transitioned if we were in North America, but we're not. Not doing too bad of a climb right now. 2,000 feet per minute for a fully loaded 330. That's not too bad at all. And while still maintaining 320 knots forward speed. So we really do have it set to a high-speed cruise today. We got the cost index cranked up to 100. Mostly because even though the winds along most of our route today are actually fairly light, it's still a headwind all the way back. And just trying to complete this stream in under 8 hours if possible. I don't think it's going to be possible. I think it's going to be closer to 9 by the time it's all said and done with the departure process and the arrival process, but anything we can do to speed up that process, I wonder. Can I speed it up even more? 1901, I wonder. $250 for the cost index. 4 minutes sooner. Still about the same amount of fuel. Give it a second. Even 250 to 500 only cuts off 1 more minute. Like you're dealing in very diminishing returns at this point. It didn't make much of a difference in the fuel burn. I mean, we're basically going at more or less max speed. We cannot go much faster. So we'll leave that. Anyways, at 500, even that will be. We should show up in Ottawa or Montreal, I should say, with plenty of fuel. And yes, Rick Inferno, we are on take 2, unfortunately. If you were still watching that last one, it just died. Unfortunately, this 330. It's a fun airplane to fly. Looks really good inside and out, but For some reason, it and I just do not get along. It's like me and an Apple product. I just don't get along with Apple products, and I don't get along with this 330 apparently. And I don't know why. I've had lots of friends using it, and they say, "Oh, it's great. I've never had a crash in it. It's worked great all the time." But it's just not my luck. It's something about this airplane, the way it works with my computer. It might be something hardware level on my computer, because this is a clean install of Windows, and I started operating the 330, and it crashes less than it did before with the clean install of Windows, but it still crashes. So we're trying it one more time, and if this does not work, I have a few other ideas. If this 330 stream crashes again, I probably won't start it again. What I may do is I may see if I could charter a different type of airplane to fly this long haul flight, something that's more reliable, i.e. the 777 or even the 47. So I may even do a sub-charter into Canadian Express colors, perhaps, with either the PMDG 47 or 777, to get this leg done, but with a more reliable airplane. If this crashes again on this stream, I'm just going to pull the plug on doing it in the 330, because it's just so frustrating. Yeah, a lot of setup. We've already been streaming for just over an hour just to get airborne. A lot of setup, and even before the stream starts. I like the airplane overall. It's a good airplane. Aerosoft has done a great job. And the funny thing about this is the thing that really kind of blows my mind about this, is that the 320 is bulletproof. The Aerosoft 320 is bulletproof on my computer. I don't think it's ever caused my sim to crash once. This thing, almost every other time I use it, crashes the sim. And I don't think there's that much difference between the two codes. I think a lot of the base code is the same, because it's the Airbus products are all very similar in terms of how they operate, in terms of the flight deck, the FMSs. They're all very similar, so you'd think there'd be a lot of common code between the 330 and the 320. But don't jinx it. But somewhere between the 320 and the 330, something changes enough that my sim and my computer just don't like it. I'm just looking here, and I see the seatbelt sign is still on. Let's go ahead and turn that off. You guys can go ahead and get up and do whatever you want in the back. Not that you can do much these days. It's not like there's a bar on board or anything anymore. Basically, you can stretch your legs and walk from front to back. Oh, good. I will have my cup of coffee, please.
Hello there, Captain.
Oh, well, the coffee would be lovely. Thank you so much. Such a silly little gimmick, but it's fun. I do enjoy a good cup of coffee while flying. Yeah, go ahead and give this 330 a try yourself. You might find you like it, you might find you don't. Most people I talk to say it's fine. They don't have any problems with it. I seem to be one of those few people. I have read in the forums, I'm not the only one. There are a few people who have had issues with it. But it doesn't seem to me... Yeah, it's not a common thing anyways for people to have problems with it. So, something I do, like I said, just doesn't like me. So yeah, so I'm seriously rethinking, what I stream on Twitch here. As much as I'm having fun doing these pilot life careers, I may change things up, but maybe not. And I was going to discuss this at the end of the flight when I can actually look at a pilot's life, because right now it's locked into the flight screen and I can't do anything else. I have to remain on this page while the flight is in progress, which is a bit frustrating. I really wish. That's one thing I really wish they would update with the software. Track the flight. Maybe have like a little thing in the corner or something where it says tracking and it's got a little progress indicator. But let me browse the rest of this, because for crying out loud, so you do these airline flights, you sit here for 8 hours. Let me browse through the rest of what's going on here. Because there's, that's a great time to glean information. I want to do it all before the flight. I want to get the flight going, and then when I'm sitting here and not doing a whole lot, I can scroll through and evaluate my career. The alert here is just that I got paid. I got a couple $100 because I got paid, because it was the end of the month. But yeah, the one thing I'd love to show you guys, but I can't. Yeah, it's silly, but... version 4 still. 4.5. I never upgraded to 5. I was sort of on the cusp of doing it, and then Microsoft announced the release date for Flight Simulator, and I spent my money on that instead. And I stand by that decision. That was money well spent. But yeah, I'd love to be able to browse, because the one thing I'd love to show you guys right now is the job market, because at this point, reaching the end of another season, it's time to reevaluate my career here on a pilot's life, and I am thinking very strongly about changing companies again. Air Transat has been fun. It's been an interesting selection of destinations, but it's a little bit repetitive already. I went to the same destination. I went to Punta Cana again for a second time on this season as last season. And as you generate more and more schedules, as you do more and more months at an airline, you're going to start to see more and more of the same places again. And of course, that's not going to be very interesting for me doing streams and so forth. And the other thing is just this 330. It gives me an ulcer. It keeps me up at night, wondering if I'm going to be able to finish a stream with it. So I'm going to probably want to switch off to an airline that I don't have, or where I have an alternative to the 330. The trouble with Air Transat is that the 330 is the only long-haul airplane. So that's what I would, that's why I'm really leaning towards switching off Air Transat. It's been a fun experience. I've enjoyed flying some interesting destinations. I really have. Some of the Caribbean and Puerto Vallarta. That was a really nice place to visit. And even coming over crossing the pond. It's not the crossing the pond, although the streams are long. It's the fact that it's an 8-hour stream with an airplane that's unreliable. Like I said, it just gets me stressed out. I'm stressed out now just thinking about it. So switch to a company that has different airplane types, that has a different long-haul type, that I'm no longer locked into doing the 330. So I checked my job market before we left, before I started the stream, and I do have a few airlines in there, most of which were not very interesting to me. The only one of the 5 airlines that were currently offering me a job that was interesting to me was WestJet. And as much as it's perhaps a little bit redundant with Encore, it's not, because it's a very different set of destinations from Encore. There is still some domestic flying, but there's a lot of transporters, a lot of American destinations, Caribbean destinations, and they even do some long hauling. And this was kind of, I thought about this, and it kind of got me interested. They do some long hauling, and they do it in the Dreamliner now, which is in Microsoft Flight Simulator. And I honestly have not yet taken that airplane up for a flight, up for a trip around the patch. I have not taken that one up. I've taken up the 320. I booted up the 47 briefly. Wasn't terribly impressed with it, but I haven't even touched the Dreamliner yet. I enjoyed taking the 320 out just because it's an airplane I'm familiar with. I know how to operate it, so I was willing to take it out. And the shortcomings and whatnot become more obvious when you know how the airplane works, having flown the Aerosoft version for a while. But the idea of perhaps taking that 787 if I get the long-haul flights in WestJet and going over to Europe using Microsoft Flight Simulator's Dreamliner. Not a high-quality simulation. Not going to claim that by any means, but some great scenery. Might be a nice change of pace for my pilot's life career. So, very heavily leaning towards taking a job at WestJet. And because of course the primarily 3.7 operator, and I've got the PMDG NGXU, so I'll have that, to work with and toy with, and that'll probably be the bulk of the flying. And that's a very reliable airplane. I have no problems operating that airplane, and it'll take me to some good places, I think. So WestJet's got a good route network across North America. Quite a bit of domestic flying in Canada, but also a lot of transporter flying, and I do have a lot of these transporter airports. So it would really be, right up my alley in terms of the scenery that's available in P3D. So that's what I'm kind of leaning towards for my next step in a pilot's life, is that I would really like to do that. I'd really like to change companies, and WestJet would be right up my alley, I think. I would kind of like something maybe with a little bit more variety, but I'm not against the European airlines, but I don't have a whole lot of airports throughout Europe. North America is still where I have my best scenery, so that's I'm still sticking with that from a flying perspective. And even if you're North American based and then you do transatlantic flying, I have like the major airports in Europe, so those usually cover a lot of the transatlantic routes. a lot of the long-haul flying to Europe would be covered by the major airports that I have. I just don't have a lot of, you know, smaller second-tier airports in Europe. I have a few here and there. Almost there. Just gonna do a quick VATSIM check here and see if there's anybody along our route. And I checked that 350 climbing 360. Nobody on our route today for ATC. I was kind of hoping for a Saturday that we'd get something, but right now we got nothing, so that's okay. We'll make do. Yeah, and Rick, I feel exactly the same way. I love Microsoft Flight Simulator. I love VFR flying in it. I do a lot of FS economy flying in it because the TBM is really good. The King Air is quite good as well. I'm hoping that they're going to continue tweaking and improving these airplanes because there's a lot of systems that are still in-op in a lot of these airplanes, and in some cases like the G1000 and the G1000 systems are still not great. They sort of work on a default level, but they're not great. Alt Cruise Star. Yeah, they're not. There's certain things in the GPS that, like activating approaches and doing direct to this point and that point, doesn't work very well in those FMS or in those GPSs yet. So I'm hoping they're going to continue tweaking and improving on those. But you're right, from a VFR perspective, it's great. I did about half a bush tour, and that was really fun. Then they screwed up the progress on the bush tours, and now I don't want to go back and start again. It really is frustrating. But we did half a bush tour already. Yeah, it's a great product for being down low and just seeing things in FS economy, flying GA airplanes. It's a great product for flying GA airplanes, and that's where FS economy again is a really good use of that simulator for now. And it's funny because like I've spent so much time flying FS economy, I really have not spent nearly as much time flying the airliners in P3D because I have a hard time going back to the scenery. I mean, it's not terrible, but it's such a step backwards when you've seen what Microsoft Flight Simulator is capable of. It's such a step backwards to go into P3D, so yeah. But if you want to fly an airliner realistically, like this in here looks better than it does in Flight Simulator. It's a tough debate sometimes. But now, yeah, when I sit down to fly, I tend to want to fly that greater scenery. So here's hoping some of those airplanes come to the new sim soon. Who knows who it's going to be first, and I really don't even care too much. I'll take probably almost anything that comes first, and I think probably 60 or 70% of simmers feel that way at this point. They love that sim, and they really want to get a good airplane in it, and the first good airplane to come along is going to sell like gangbusters. If it's Aerosoft's CRJ, if it's the Quality Wings 8.7, those are the two that, to me, seem to be furthest along, and it's probably going to be between those two. We all know PMDG is not coming around for a year, which is fine. They have a complicated product. They need the SDK to reach a certain level before they can really, even realistically, consider releasing that product. So yeah, so we're not looking at PMDG for a year. Other developers, really, who else has even committed to the platform from an airliner perspective? I don't even think. Trying to think now. I know all the developers are interested in it and they're looking at it and they're thinking about it, but who's going to actually do it? Yeah, I think Aerosoft's RJ is probably going to be one of the first ones out there. It feels like that's going to be it anyways. It feels like they were the first to sort of bring some good screenshots and make some firm commitments, and nobody else seems to be there yet. You know, I'd love to see the Majestic Dash 8, and I was just saying this the other day. I think the Majestic Dash 8 would be absolutely wonderful in Flight Simulator because it's a little bit lower, a little bit slower than flying in a jet. You know, you're 25 instead of 35,000 feet. You're a little bit slower, so you're going to get a little bit more time to enjoy the scenery. So I think that one especially too. And then you can also usually sneak into a lot smaller airports and have a little bit more fun with it than you can with a jet per se. So that one's going to be a great one to bring to the new platform. But that one, to me, strikes me as something that's going to be a long time in coming because it's a very small development studio. I feel like it's really just a handful of guys at Majestic, and it's not doesn't have the resources that Aerosoft has. Aerosoft, I recall reading some interviews and things with I can't think of his name now, but the guy who's kind of manages all the projects at Aerosoft there. Can't think of his name now. But yeah, he said that they have expanded to the point where they have 2 full aircraft development teams that can work on 2 separate projects simultaneously, have 2 projects fully in the pipeline at the same time. And when you've got that much capability, you're going to be able to bring products to market faster. I love Majestic's Dash 8, and I think it's a great product, but I feel like they're a very small developer. They're not going to have it's going to take them a long time to upgrade and work that aircraft into the simulator, which is a shame, because I think that's going to be a great airplane in Microsoft Flight Simulator. When you're cruising along at 35,000 feet, you miss so much of the detail that's down there in that scenery. But we'll see. The other one I think would do really well, and I don't know if they're even really working on it, would be, of course, Leonardo's Mad Dog. Would also be another great airplane to see in that sim. And certainly want to see Aerosoft bring the 320 platform as well, but I think that's going to be second to the RJ. The RJ I think is very far along, whereas I think the 320 is barely even started, and I hope they will start it soon, because the RJ's got a little bit of a limited market just because it's got the little bit shorter legs than the 320. A little bit less common than the 322, so I think people will fly it if it's available. But I don't think, the 320 and the 37 are obviously like the 2 workhorse airliners out there, and if you can think of 2 products that you want people to have to really get the maximum use out of the sim and out of the networks, the 320 and the 37 are where it's at. Well, not too much happening on the VATSIM network today. I mean, there is, but just not along our route. Alright, so we're going to go to live map here today. Let it load its tiles. Oh, there we go. I don't know if I like this one particularly, but okay, first of all, let's do control, let's do follow me, let's turn that on so it keeps track of where I am here. Yeah, I don't really like this map style as much as I thought I would. That one's a little nicer. I don't mind this one, but it makes it hard to see what I'm looking for, which in this case is I want to see the VATSIM ATC. As you can see, of course, along our route today, nothing. A big fat nada. Here we are. And yeah, big fat nada along our route today, unfortunately. I'm going to turn off the follow me today here. So there's our route today. A very straight route today. It's pretty much almost the Great Circle route. Gander's online now. We're not going to be there for about 5 hours. Almost a perfect Great Circle route between Nice and Montreal. I think was only 1% longer than the absolute minimum distance for this route today. Can I overlay? I cannot. Yeah. But yeah, very straight route today. What I was looking for was... We'll go to this here. We'll go to our flight plan here. Oh, if I can bring this to like a reasonable size that you can see most of this. Our routing today here. There we go. Our routing today here, so here's the NAT track actually. Here's NAT track Alpha, it's the westbound track, and as you can see it's fairly far south because it's not a strong jet stream, but it is a little bit northern Quebec here today. And the original flight plan that was generated actually had me fly down this NAT track, but then I looked at it and it said it was almost 10%, I think it was 9% greater distance to come down here and fly this route because it's a little bit further south, it's a little bit longer distance than if you go the Great Circle route over the north. And I looked at the winds and I said, well, the wind here and here is almost the same. Here and here, it's almost the same. It's mostly a crosswind, really, when you're dealing with the, by the time you're dealing with the jet stream. Over here, it's so light as to be almost nil effect. So I decided to try this Great Circle route. This cut almost 30 minutes off the flight by going this route. This was an additional, 400 or 500 miles longer. Just not worth it. This would be more appropriate if you were doing flights kind of into the northeast US or even southeast US, midwest US. This would be very appropriate. But to go into Montreal, you're going so far south that you actually have to cut back north to get to Montreal. It just wasn't worth it. So our route today is very much a Great Circle route. We're going to cross just south of the tip of England, just south of Ireland, straight across up to about 54 north, before we curve back down and across Gander. Figured out that was going to be the most efficient route today. But that's a fairly complex set of calculations too when you come down to it. Trying to optimize, trying to pick from an almost infinite number of routes. Like when you look at two airports that are, a couple thousand miles apart, there's an almost infinite number of routes that you could choose between them. In terms of going a little bit north, a little bit south here and there, and trying to avoid the winds. The power you have to have in that software to generate a flight plan, to determine the most optimal flight plan all the time, it really kind of starts to blow the mind when you think about how many different iterations the software's got to run. And a dispatcher looking at it usually wants the response, within 15, 20, 30 seconds at the most. They don't want to be sitting there for 10 minutes waiting while the computer crunches a bunch of different algorithms to try and figure out what the most optimal route is. You want the answer quickly, so it makes me certainly wonder how much, computing power does Lido have in the real world to crunch these numbers and quickly come up with what's the most efficient route between point A and point B. It's got to be a pretty powerful system. And not only that, but they've got multiple people doing it at the same time. Lido is used by dozens of major airlines worldwide. Every second of or every minute of every day, there's probably a couple hundred different flight plans being run through Lido, different scenarios perhaps being run through Lido, and Lido's got to come up and quickly, offer the most optimal solutions based on whatever constraints the dispatchers might put in there. And probably the less constraints to put in there, the harder it is to come up with a route, because then it's just ever more infinite number of combinations. And then it's three-dimensional too when you think about it too. Not only is it, you look at it laterally and say, okay, across all these paths laterally, what's the most efficient, usually the shortest time route to get across here? Is it go a little farther north? Is it come a little farther south? Is it maybe go north here initially and then go south? How do you figure that stuff out? Like and I mean, a computer can do it, but it just, the number of possibilities, just a little bit further north, a lot further north, even further, like how many different possibilities, and that's just in the lateral dimension. And then you've got the vertical dimension. This route might be more optimal at 360, but maybe there's a different route that's even more optimal if we stay at 340, but the winds are lower. The number of permutations that you have here is just crazy when you start to think about it. And yet Lido, literally you type in some parameters, you hit send to Lido, and the dispatcher usually has the most optimal route back on their desk within 10 seconds. Asking SimBrief to do that obviously is just going to be unfeasible. As it is, the amount of power that this system uses up is quite something. Every once in a while, I just love to go to see the system status page here and just see what this system is doing. I wonder if SimBrief has gotten a little bit of a reprieve with Microsoft Flight Simulator, because I don't think as many people are flying the airliners, and not just in that sim, but because people are diverting their time from P3D and the like to Microsoft Flight Simulator. I imagine SimBrief is getting a little bit of a breather. CPU load 5 to 33%. OFPs per minute, 33 OFPs per minute. It's not all that many. I mean, we're getting into afternoon in in Europe, so we're starting to get into a busier period of time for the weekend. OFPs since launch, I love this. 26 million OFPs. I don't know when the launch was because it doesn't specify, but 26 million OFPs made with this system. 36,000 this in the last 24 hours. 232,000 flight plans in the last week. 385,000 users in their user database. 385,000 users. Tons. Blows the mind. Now, mind you, users online in the past week. 51,000 people. People who use the system are pretty regular users. Like, you look at this, and out of all the people who used it in the past week, 51,000, 21,000 used it in the last day. So, now mind you, it's a weekend, so it's kind of a bit of weird, but you extrapolate that the other way. Half of all the users are using this on an almost daily basis. And it's not necessarily strictly true, but, you know, the people who use this use it regularly. They don't use it like, you know, once a week. They use it multiple times a week. Even, and you look at the past month. So 50,000 users in the past week, 80,000 users, 90,000 users in the past month. So almost half the people who use it in the last month have also used it in the last week. It's a system that, you know, once people discover it and they realize what it can do, they use it very regularly. Most popular airlines. Lufthansa is not usually number one. Usually it's like Delta. British Airways, of course, always a popular favorite. Air Canada is also often popular on here. Aeroflot, 4,400 flight plans for Aeroflot. It's interesting to see, anyways, who's popular and who's not. And of course, the perennial types. The two workhorses of the fleet, easily more than triple the next one's up the list here. 280,000 within the last month. 280,000 320s flight plans. 187,000 737, 800 flight plans. And then these are just more of the 320 family. If you count the whole 320 family, you're talking another 54, another 50. You're talking almost 400,000 flight plans filed just for the 320 family here. If you get even the 37 doesn't even come close anymore. The good old Queen of the Skies is down here in 12th place now. 747-800 is even a little higher than that. Lots of people flying the Dreamliner, and look at this TBM. There is the Microsoft Flight Simulator knock-on effect right there. 22,000 TBM 900 flight plans filed. This is Microsoft Flight Simulator right here. People are just bombing around and killing it in FS economy with TBMs. A very efficient airplane in FS economy. That's what I've discovered, anyways, because it's got a very low fuel burn. FS economy allows it to take up to 7 people, which is not a bad carrying load, but you're talking only a single turbine engine burning fuel, turboprop engine burning fuel. It's very fuel efficient. You don't burn a whole lot of fuel. Most of the charge I end up with in FS economy on the TBM is usually the aircraft rental fee, which if you're paying much more than $600 an hour for the TBM, you're probably being overcharged. There's plenty of them out there for rent for about $500 an hour. I did have a little bit of fun, and I actually, here's again, this is, see, and I wonder this, like the 747-8, I wonder how much of this is you know, knock-on from Microsoft Flight Simulator, and again, the Dreamliner as well, how much of this is knock-on from Microsoft Flight Simulator. Even the Cessna 172, tons of people doing VFR flying. Not really what Lido was ever meant for. And the CJ2, which is also in the CJ4, is also in Microsoft Flight Simulator. So, like a lot of these airplanes here in the top 25 in the last month, the King Air 350, even 7,000 flight plans. A lot of Microsoft Flight Simulator buried in these numbers here. Lots of Microsoft Flight Simulator. I did my first flight in FS economy in the Citation, and it's a lot of fun. What a difference in terms of economy from the TBM. I still make plenty of money on the flight, but all the money when you're flying a Citation goes out the window to the fuel. The fuel was, I think, about 70% of the cost of running the flight was the fuel. Whereas when you're dealing with a TBM, the cost of the fuel is usually about 30% of the cost of the flight. The aircraft rental is usually more expensive than the fuel, usually almost by a factor of 2 with the TBM. Whereas it's reversed, at least for the Citation. You're paying at least double your rental price in terms of fuel used. I always love this too. 24 hours, last 24 hours flight plans generated. You can see what's popular, what's not. Europe right now especially is very popular. I'm gonna guess, now, looking at this, because yesterday was Friday, you have to figure there was probably an FNO going on. Looking at these, yeah, hard to gauge where the FNO was. It looks like maybe in Florida, because there's a lot of stuff kind of coming in here, but a lot of stuff coming in and out of New York, too, in and out of the New York area. So was the FNO in New York last night? I wonder. And let's see here. So this, because is this the last 50 or is this the last 24 hours? This is the last 24 hours, right? Recent OFPs. No, this is just. No, this is just past hour, past threes. So let's do past 12 hours. Let's see the OFPs for the past 12 hours. It's kind of fun to explore and see what other people are doing with the sim through SimBrief. And mind you, that's not necessarily an accurate thing here, but oh, see, and that's the thing. I think that was the last hour it was filed. That's why Europe was dense in North America. People are just waking up. Nobody's filing North America yet. Okay, so last 12 hours. Wow, you can see certain hubs in North America that just are absolutely crazy. Lots of stuff from the New York area. I can't tell where the FNO was to look at this. It could have been any of the major hubs here. The Texas and Dallas, okay, not so busy, but it looks like Los Angeles was very busy yesterday. San Francisco, Seattle, Miami, Orlando, Chicago. Not so much Minneapolis, doesn't look super busy. And then the Northeast here especially looks ridiculously busy. So I can't tell where the FNO was just to look at it here. But these would have been about the time you would have been, excuse me, going the FNOs, Midnight Zulu, anything in there, a lot. And nothing stands out to me in that whole time period right there as being filed particularly a crazy amount. I can't begin to guess. I just can't. It's yeah, okay. I'm stumped. I am stumped at this point. Can't type. Stumped at this point. I have no idea. Cornfield Crossfire. Detroit, Chicago. And Cincinnati. I couldn't tell just from looking at this. There wasn't enough repetition. And the trouble with the Crossfire is that because it's only hitting up 3 airports, it'll only show up as one line on here. So Chicago, Detroit, Detroit, Cincy, and Cincy back to... yeah, Cincy right there, probably back to Chicago. Doesn't look particularly busy. Hard to tell just looking at those flight plans in the last 12 hours. What's the longest I get? 24 hours? Let's see what people have done in the past 24 hours. It's thinking, it's thinking. Low priority request for SimBrief, that's for sure. Too far down. Oh, it's taking a long time to load this page here. There we go. The route map for the past 24 hours is really what I want to see. And you can see where people like to fly. And the flight simulation community, it really is, and I hate to say it's biased towards any one group, although there's quite a lot of stuff happening in Asia, but it really is biased towards Europe, North America, and the ocean between them is really the majority. And it's not to say that that's the only place people like to fly. Obviously, lots of people are flying from Europe over to Asia, and quite a bit of flying back and forth across to and from Australia and throughout Africa, and especially South America here, also very popular with a large Europe to South America corridor here. But the density of fruits here. Can't even see Europe for the density of roots within it. Crazy. And then there's going to be across the pond. Across the pond will paint a very different picture, most likely. 1 week today. If you haven't already booked a slot, the bookings are already all... The bookings for the lottery system are already all gone. I'm happy to see that this year they went with the lottery system, because I think that's going to make it a lot fairer in the long run for everybody to try and get a piece of the action. Because the other thing too, and this is what I think I like most about the lottery system, is it's not going to pay off right away, but it'll pay off in the long run. Because if you apply for a lottery, across the pond slot this year, and you don't win on the lottery, you don't get a slot this year for this session, the next time you bid, your odds of winning the lottery will be improved. I don't know how exactly they're working it out. If they're doubling the odds for people who didn't make it last time, and every time you don't make it, you get an extra ticket in the lottery. But to me, that is when it becomes extremely fair, because you'll never get everybody in one go, because there's just too much. And that's what it's come down to, is that there's too many airplanes trying to use the same airspace. There's only so many controllers available, and there's only so much capability to train more controllers in it in the VATSIM system. Training controllers is not a fast process in VATSIM. It's not. It takes quite a while. It's a lot of it is one-on-one training with people. An instructor sitting there monitoring a student and helping them through all the stages of learning to control, but little by little, one by one. But for every hour, pretty much, that a student has learned, there's been an hour of an instructor spent with them, and there's a limited number of instructors. There's a limited number of people who can volunteer enough time to really be a decent instructor. So it takes a long time for controllers to make it through the whole training process. And so controllers really are the limitation in the cross the pond world. They are the limited resource. There's only so many controllers out there, and they can only do so much. And unfortunately, the last few years, as the popularity of the event has just continued to build and build, it's become more and more overwhelming. So I'm happy to see that, as much as they'd love to welcome everybody, there is a practical limit, and if you exceed that practical limit too much, the joy and the fun of the whole process breaks down to the point where nobody's having fun, and it's just a hard slog through aviation, and it's just not fun anymore. And I mean, there has been talk about shutting down Cross the Pond in some circles for a while now, just because it's an event that's a victim of its own success. It's so successful, and it so overloads the network, so overloads the controlling staff at so many. And not so much at the airports, it's usually the en route sectors that really bear the brunt of it, because the airports, they have a limited interaction with each airplane and then they're gone. But it's the en route sectors where you've got an airplanes take an hour or more to traverse your sector, and you have a couple hundred of them doing it, trying to do it at the same time. It's completely overwhelming. So yeah, there was talk in some circles that Cross the Pond should just be eliminated as an event because it was too popular. It was too many people trying to fly at the same time, and break it up into a few more reasonably sized events where most people who want to participate could participate. And I've kind of liked that, actually. I have noticed that in the last year or so, that there have been mini Cross the Ponds that have been kind of, I won't say they're all the rage, but that have become a little bit more popular. People have been spending more time, various FIRs have gotten together with somebody across the pond and just made up a mini Cross the Pond. We're just going to have just one evening, we're just going to have 2 airports, and we're going to make sure we're going to contact the en route sectors, we're going to get coverage for you from end to end, but it's only going to be small. It's only going to be 2 airports, and usually, because it's not the official event, not a whole lot of people participate. You might get a dozen or 2 dozen or 3 dozen, which is a good number, though. That's a good number for those kind of events. Enough to keep the airports and the en route sectors busy, but not overloaded. the way across the pond is just an overload. And yeah, so there were some groups in VATSIM that were pushing for that. We're pushing for, let's cancel Across the Pond as a biannual event, and let's see if we can instead encourage more smaller events that are just more practically sized to the network. We can still have across the, long distance events, but let's just not rely on having 2 of them per year, and everybody and their mother shows up twice a year to participate in these events, because that's just not being healthy for anybody. Oh, just looking over at my VATSPY, and it appears there is a EuroControl online. Where's my V pilot here? 3525. And at the second I notice it, there's the beep. Just happened to glance over at my VATSPY, and there it was. EuroControl, good afternoon, I guess. Transat 649er, flight level 360.
Transat 649er, hello, Squawk 1000.
Squawk 1000 to Transat 649er.
EuroControl West, Michigan Air 055, with you, flight level 380.
Michigan Air 055, hello, Euro West, direct, Ado to maintain flight level 380.
Say again, direct.
Ado to Alpha Delta Uniform Delta Oscar.
Direct, I do to maintain flight level 380.
Control, good day, Eurowing 7532, level 350.
Eurowing 7532, hello, identify 350, direct Atlin, Alpha Tango Lima, Echo November.
Direct Atlin, Eurowing 7532, thank you.
EuroControl West, good day, Eurowing 7580, flight level 300.
The first few minutes with a new controller online, always completely overwhelming.
Last station calling, it was broken.
Eurowing 7580.
Eurowings 7580, hello, identified 390.
And tons of people.
Again for Eurowing 7580.
Tons of people trying to get a hold of him by text as well. You can hear the little
Identified, sir, identified 390.
7580.
Actually got a little bit of a tailwind component right now.
54 Lima Yankee, hello, identified 370.
54 knots, and it's a little bit off our tail. And we're about to get even more of a tailwind to make the turn to the right here.
No, we don't want.
I think he's forgotten to identify us at this point.
Mike Charlie with you descending from level 340 to level 200, expecting ambush 9 arrival for the remote pickup.
180 Mike Charlie, descent flight level 250, reaching 250, Unicom 122.8.
Yeah, I think he forgot about us. That's fine. I'm not too worried. We're on course, we're established at altitude. If we're in conflict with anybody, he will certainly call us.
Easy 21 Zulu X-ray, hello, squawk 0600, climb now flight level 380. Air Portugal 122 Euro West.
Euro West, go ahead.
Air Portugal 122 direct, India Delta, Bravo India Delta. Air Portugal 122 direct, 8 bit.
Direct 8 bit, Airport quantity.
Alrighty.
Quality 4840, requesting 30. Quality 4840, Madrid just went offline. Sorry, Unicom 122.8. Bye-bye.
But anyways, regardless of the future of Cross the Pond this year is happening, and I'm glad to see with the lottery system, because I think it's going to be the most fair in the long run. You know, if you don't get in on one particular across the pond as a pilot with a slot, your odds will go up for future ones, which is great because until now it's been a free-for-all.
Portugal 122, you need to fly direct 8-bit, otherwise you won't be able to make it for the arrival because you're flying a wrong route.
Yeah, what was I saying? This guy is distracting me with his ATC thing. But yeah, like because in the past, obviously every cross pond has been completely separate, and the people who get the slots are the people who happen to have time off, and usually on the days when they're released, or have a job where they could be in front of a computer and clicking away, trying to get a slot instead of doing their job while they're working. You know, but sometimes the slots get released when some people are sleeping, people are at school, people just don't have the option to book slots, and it's the people who are home from school already, perhaps, or people who are retired, people who have nothing else to do, they're unemployed. Those are the people who get the slots.
1434, welcome back. Airport 122
It's not.
Euro West.
It's just not fair to everyone in the long run. Not everyone can be available
confirming flying direct 8-bit.
at every moment. So it's good to see that, you know, they found a way that hopefully will ensure over the long run, if you don't get to participate in this one, you're even more likely to participate in the next one. So over time, hopefully it will be most fair to the most number of people. We'll see how it works. I mean, this is something that at the end of the day, it's going to depend on, you know, how well the system is run, the algorithm that they come up with. So it's an idea that's in its infancy, but if the idea does come to pass, I think it will. Certainly it works well in theory. We'll see how it works well in practice as they start to implement it, but I certainly wish them good luck. I think it's going to be I think it's going to be an improvement. I think it's going to make people happier in the long run, just to get more people participating.
Portugal 1021, Euro West.
Portugal 1023, requesting 2 minutes off the cockpit.
There's a lot of Air Portugals out there.
Just make it for maximum 2 minutes, please.
Welcome.
This guy's working hard.
Just 1 for Echo, A from Sir Unicom 122.8, thanks for your patience, bye-bye.
Thank you, bye-bye.
EuroControl West CG12, we are currently flying through some cirrus clouds and we want to request flight level 350. Okay.
It's funny to hear all this.
I have 360 or 320.
We'll take 360 for easy 12.
It's funny to hear the number of people who actually make like somewhat realistic complaints to these controllers too.
West Airport, Show 573, flight level 370, inbound Bravo Sierra November.
It is amazing how realistic so much of this ends up sounding from day to day.
345 ready to descend.
I still remember the first time I ever flew the VATSIM network and how completely overwhelmed I was by the realism of this network. This is 10 years ago now.
Thunder 418 standby, I've been stepping on another pilot, ran at 345.
And you know, at the time I didn't even believe that this network existed. I read about it and I'm like, no, there's no way that there are this many people out there that are this interested in aviation that they've actually established a full network with full-on ATC. And then I logged on the first time, and I actually found controllers the first time I logged on. And I thought, oh, it's gonna be amateurs. It's gonna be a bunch of people just goofing off. And I was just shocked at the level of realism that existed on the system. Absolutely shocked. Shocked in a good way, though. I mean, I'm just absolutely shocked. I couldn't believe how accurate how real the controllers were. Eventually, I got into it a lot more, obviously, but and I understand where it comes from now. But yeah, at the time, I was just, like I said, I was shocked. I still remember that first time. I still remember one of the controllers that controlled me. He was one of the people that helped train me in the end. And I was sitting there trying to muddle my way through an FSX GPS and doing a very bad job of it. And the controller was calling me on it, and I'm like, wow, these guys have some pretty realistic expectations. Blew me away. I did not think that... I didn't think that was going to be the case anyways. didn't think I was going to get that much realism right off the bat. So,
EuroControl Airport Airliner 43, flight level 390, approaching Alpha Golf November.
and the number of people in this network that operate at this level all the time.
Flight level 310. Yes, then Mach V transition to 390, confirm.
So as I'm sitting here now, I also noticed that we now have Gander. We had briefly, I thought we had a Shanwick online, but at least we have Gander. We have Gander radio online, so we're going to have to request our oceanic clearance at some point here. Let's take a step back for a moment here and see where along our route are we going to be requesting our oceanic clearance. So our first fix here looks like 1355 is what we're going to enter the oceanic airspace, so we want to do it about 1330, so another 45 minutes. We're going to probably request our oceanic clearance, so we're not there yet. We're not there yet, but we're getting there. Not sure. Ooh, and there's even traffic on our radar now. Not sure if I'm going to be able to stay online that long, just in terms of streaming and chatting here. But we'll see if we can find enough things of interest anyways to talk about. One thing of interest I noted this last week is that Planet Earth, for those of you that are space nerds anyways, Planet Earth has re-established contact with Voyager 2, with the Voyager 2 spacecraft after I think it was an 9-month communications blackout that was caused by the fact that there's only one antenna on Planet Earth that is strong enough and powerful enough to send and receive signals from Voyager 2, which is now the most distant man-made object ever. And that antenna array was taken offline in February for systems upgrades and was only just recently brought back online in October. So very late in October, they finally were able to get it online, and they sent a signal to Voyager 2 to get a response, just to check that it was still out there, that it's still transmitting and receiving and working. And it took a little while, but they got a response. And when I say a little while, it took 34 hours. 34 hours for a signal, for a radio signal, which travels at the speed of light, to make it all the way to the Voyager 2 spacecraft and back to planet Earth. And all they got in response was a simple response of just the word hello in text. But at least it was enough of a response to acknowledge that the spacecraft is still there, it's still functioning, still receiving communications from Earth and able to process them. Because at this point, I do believe that sometime in the last year or so, read about it, I remember reading about it, the Voyager 2 aircraft left our solar system, became the first man-made object to leave our solar system, and is now officially in interstellar space. So it's so far out there, it's not even part of our solar system, it's past all the extremities of our solar system. At a point where basically it's no longer, you can't even imagine, like our sun probably appears as little more than a star to it now. It's so far away. I did the math, and I forget what the math was, but it's something like 62 million miles away. 62 billion miles away. I forget what the factor was. It's so far away. It just starts to lose all meaning and relevance. But it's still going out there, and it will probably still keep going for centuries because it's powered by a nuclear reactor. It's so far out there that solar panels would do nothing. There is so little light out there because it's so far away from the sun that it needs to have its own self-contained power source. So yeah, fortunately, the people that designed Voyager designed it to last. Back when it was originally launched, it was never really designed to last, or it wasn't that it was designed to last, that it wasn't supposed to last. To save money, the management said don't build it too well, because at the end of the day they didn't have all that much of a budget for the Voyager for the Voyager flights. So they said, build a spacecraft that does this, this, and this, but, you know, don't spend too much money on it because we don't have all that much money in the budget. But the engineers sort of disregarded it anyways and built the best spacecraft they could. And as a result, it's still going. It's been
1434, approach 11901.
It's been 43 years since Voyager 2 left planet Earth. It's made it out of the solar system, and it took 43 years to make it out of the solar system, and it's also the fastest man-made object in existence now, based on its speed relative to planet Earth. It's moving away from us faster than any other object we've ever built, but it's still, you know, it will still take it eons to reach the next solar system at the speed it's moving at. It just, the distances when you get to outer space are so vast. Nevertheless, it's great to see that it is still out there, it is still transmitting, and hopefully one day it'll find something interesting out there, because out there in interstellar space there's not much going on. It's a long way to the next star, and it's not necessarily even going in the right direction to get to the next star. Its trajectory was based basically on it's the remnants of trying to do flybys of all the planets, the outer planets in our solar system. So its trajectory out of the solar system is purely just a coincidence based on what worked best to get it to those outer planets. It's not like it has a target anymore. It's long outlived its original target life, and now it's just, this is all just gravy time. Any scientific discoveries it makes, any information it sends back to Earth, at this point it's just gravy. It's a good 20-25 years past its original intended lifespan. I tell you this, if you let companies like Apple and Apple or Ford or anybody build that spacecraft nowadays, it wouldn't last 3 years. Companies make a lot more money these days not building things that last. It's sad that the human race has forgotten how to build things to last a long time. Everything is disposable and replaceable. Or at least that's what a lot of these companies would have you believe. Everyone runs out of the flight deck while they're in cruise. Possibly leave the flight deck for 30 minutes, 15 minutes max. All you get is 15 minutes. Once we get to Oceanic, we'll probably step out of the flight deck. In between the position reports, we'll do the position reports. But yeah, we're not gonna be here for 8 hours today. That's for sure. There's a few other things I have on my plate to get done as well today.
EuroControl, ready for descent, 3.245.
I wonder if SimToolkit Pro shows the EuroControl.
1205, Euro West Squawk 1000, climb now, flight level 380.
Thinking about it. Yeah, it's got EuroControl West there. 35.25 covering all these areas. And we don't have anybody. Amazingly, we don't have any London control. It's pretty rare. But then I do believe over here we should have Gander.
Airport table 1023, continue descent, flight level 230.
It's incorrectly being shown as Gander domestic, but CZQX is actually the Oceanic control, so we will get an Oceanic clearance from them before we enter Oceanic airspace. We're going to do it in about another 30 or 40 minutes here. We'll get that clearance. Because I don't believe, I'm pretty sure this is going to be our entry point here. It's going to be, this is a Daru, I think, or whatever it was.
Runner 1 Mike Golf, hello, I will need you on an even flight level 340 or 320.
I'll have to determine it. So we're 16% of the way down our flight here. Still got a ways to go. I'm going to pull up Let's see what can I pull up here.
Ryanair 410 in cockpit now.
Thanks, welcome back. Ryanair 1 Mike Golf, climb flight level 340 and squawk 0602.
Hold on, I'm just trying to figure out. Sorry, I'm just looking at my other screen here. I can probably pull it up here on my SimBrief screen here.
Thank you very much.
Now graph charts. Yeah, the weird thing is when you kind of cut from the mainland Europe, the oceanic airspace actually starts sooner, so we may actually cut through the oceanic. If I do this, load my flight from SimBrief, should paint my route on there nicely for us.
Descent fly level 240 to be level at Loris.
See, we may actually start the oceanic segment a little earlier than I thought here. Here at Ratka, not at Adar, because we're cutting the corner. Here we're going to be Ratka, and then most of this way is going to be oceanic. Then we're going to cut a little corner of Shannon's airspace, but I believe usually the lower level or the higher levels they don't even care about us too much, to be honest. So actually, Ratka would appear to be where we should have our oceanic entry point. So let's just check here. At what point are we getting to Ratka? 1317, so it would be appropriate to get our oceanic clearance now. So let's get some information here and be ready. Flight plan, I want to have this because I want to have my waypoints. Alright, so we're requesting 360 for the crossing. I believe the climb to 380 is at the end of the crossing. Altitudes. 380 starting at Rickle, which is, yeah, it's the end of the crossing. Alright, so we're going to go 380. And where's our routing here? I'm just going to... There it is. So this whole part here is our routing, and Mach number we're doing 83, we'll request 84. EuroControl Transat 649er.
Transat 649er, EuroControl, go ahead.
Transat 649er, I'd like to request off frequency for a few minutes to get the oceanic clearance.
Transat 649er, standby.
Okay. I don't even know what the frequency is here, so let's get that dialed up.
649er, contact Shanwick 131 for your oceanic clearance. It's 131.7.
Okay, 131.7, and we'll call you when we're back. Thank you, Transat 649er. Alright, over to the oceanic. Gander Radio, good morning, Transat 649er.
Transat 649er, standby.
He's getting his spreadsheet ready. It's a lot of typing and handwriting when you're working the oceanic sectors. Hey, 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 goodbye. Yes? Usually the standby is like 30 seconds. Oh well.
Transat 649, Gander is ready, pass message.
Canada Radio, thank you, Transat 649, requesting oceanic clearance via random routing. Waypoints Ratka, Romeo Alpha Tango Kilo Alpha, Adara, Alpha Delta Alpha Romeo Alpha, 53 North, 020 West, 54 North, 030 West, 54 North, 040 West, 53 North, 050 West, and Rickle Romeo India Kilo Alpha Lima. Requesting flight level 360, Mach decimal 84. Estimating Adara at... estimating Ratka at 1317 Zulu.
Okay, what did you estimating on Adara?
Estimating Ratka 1317 Zulu.
I'm just asking for Adara, next waypoint. Ratka is not transported Oceanic, so Adara will be your first waypoint.
Okay, Adara estimating 1354 Zulu.
Okay, step by for a second.
Then he's got to crunch his numbers, see if he's got any conflicting traffic. It doesn't look like the ocean's too busy yet. There's definitely some traffic, but it's not that much. Just looking at my VATSPY screen over there. Yeah, not a whole lot of oceanic traffic yet. Some, but not a whole lot.
Transat 649, you ready, copy?
Go ahead, Transat 649. Papers ready.
Transat 649, Gander clear you to Charlie Yankee for Lima. Via random routing Adara, 539020 West, 549030 West, 549040 West, 53050 West. Then Rika. From Adara, maintain flight level 360 Mach decimal 84. Cross Adara at 1354 Zulu. Gander ready.
Transat 649er is clear to Montreal via Adara, 53 North 020 West, 54 North 030 West, 54 North 040 West, 53 North 50 West, Rickle. After Adara, maintain flight level 360, Mach decimal 84, and cross Adara at 1354 Zulu, Transat 649er.
Transat 649, read 40 correct, switch to domestic frequency and call me back over Adara. Gander ready.
Okay, thank you. It's back to the domestic, and we'll call you over Adara, Transat 649er. Talk to you in a bit. There we go. We have oceanic clearance. Back to domestic frequency.
EuroControl, Portugal 646, request out of cockpit for 5 minutes.
I'm not going to bother calling him if he's not answering other people. There's no point in doing that, right? Obviously busy.
Portugal 646.
Did anybody else hear a dog in the background barking when we were getting that oceanic clearance? They're letting dogs in the center now, are they? EuroControl, Transat 649er is back on frequency. Nope, nothing, nothing. Hope you guys brought a good book because it's about to get to the exciting part.
Portugal 646, radio check.
I guess we stepped away for a minute. Get rid of this too. a nice sun reflection there on the wing. Pretty well done. What I'm really going for is an external shot that shows that yes, there we are. We're leaving France behind. Ready to cross the almighty Atlantic. Leaving a little bit of a contrail behind ourselves there too. A little bit. I guess EuroControl is not around anymore. Did he log off while we were... He actually did, I think. I don't see him anymore. Just gonna hit refresh on my VATSIM. I don't know if he logged off on purpose or if he just fell off the world, but I didn't hear him making any announcements that he was getting ready to leave. I feel like it was probably a mistake that he left. Sometimes that happens. Software crashes, networks go down, controllers sometimes just disappear unexpectedly. Well, we'll stay on the frequency for a few more minutes before we panic. It was nice to have ATC for a while anyways, but if he's gone, then we may step out of the flight deck, because I think we've spent a fair bit of time in the flight deck for now. It's been, I think, about 2 hours now since we started the stream. A little over 2 hours. Yeah, two and a quarter. Give him another minute or two. If he doesn't show up, we may step out of the flight deck too, and just check back in when we actually enter the oceanic phase. Because sadly, not much happens here in the intermediate phases. Mostly what you do is you do some fuel checks. You make sure you still got enough fuel to get to your destination. Make sure that your fuel still adds up. The best thing you can do here is take your fuel page and add your fuel used to the total fuel on board, and you should still come up with the fuel that you started with. So 11,500 plus 44,000. We'll say 44,000 plus 11,000 is 55 plus 500, 55,500, which is exactly what we started with. Because these fuel use numbers are based on the fuel flow meters that go into the engine. So it doesn't completely eliminate the chance of a fuel leak, but it generally means there's nothing leaking out of the tanks. It is always possible that there's a fuel leak after the fuel flow transducer. So after the point that measures the fuel flowing into the engine, it's always possible there could be a leak after that. But it's such a small distance, relatively speaking, that it's highly unlikely. What's much more likely is fuel to leak out of the tanks themselves or out of some of the plumbing that goes from the tank to the engines. Within the engine, it's a pretty compact unit. There's not a whole lot of extra room for fuel to be leaking out there. But as long as these two numbers add up to what you started with, then it's a pretty fair indication that you're not leaking any fuel. Which is probably one of the most important concerns you've got. Ask some other Air Transat 330 captains, Captain Pichet. Ask him what it was like to have a fuel leak out over the Atlantic. Because certainly once you get out over the Atlantic, there is not much in the way of alternative plans if you start to run low on fuel. Now we still got 43 tons of fuel on board at a burn rate of basically 6 tons an hour. Even right now, that basic math tells me we have 7 hours of fuel on board the aircraft at our present rate of consumption. So we've got lots of fuel for our oceanic crossing. Our oceanic crossing is going to take us, let's have a look-see here. Now, this is no wind factored in there, but till Rickle, 1657. So that's basically almost 1700. It's just a little under 4 hours from now till our oceanic crossing is completed. We should have still 3 hours of fuel beyond what our oceanic crossing is going to require. The biggest problem you have in an oceanic crossing is not so much what to do at altitude, but the other big problem that you get with oceanic crossing is what to do if you lose an engine. Because if you lose an engine, your fuel consumption gets chopped in half, but it doesn't, because the second you lose an engine, you're not going to have enough thrust to maintain flight level 360. You're going to eventually slow down, and you're eventually going to have to start descending in order to maintain airspeed down to a lower altitude where you can't get enough thrust out of one engine. And it's usually, depends on the airplane, depends on the load, but you're going to be down into the 20s or the teens to level off. Maybe the low 20s or the high teens to level off. And as you go down, of course, the fuel consumption or to get enough power off that one engine is going to increase back to the point where you may not be able to make it as far as you'd like, because you're going to be burning a bit more, you're going to be burning a lot more fuel running that one engine basically at max power, trying to maintain as much thrust as possible out of the one operating engine, which is going to definitely increase fuel consumption there. But you're also going to be operating probably at reduced airspeed on that one operating engine, so you may not be burning as much fuel per hour, but you're also not going to be going as fast, so it's going to take you much more fuel at those lower altitudes to get back somewhere. And that's the whole point behind the ETOPS, is that we have to make a determination, make sure we know what our closest airports are in case of an emergency, and if we have to descend to a single engine flying altitude, where am I looking here, my flight plan, I need to know what my outs are. And Lido has done that for us nicely today. So we've got various circles here. These various circles basically show us the distance of the range, not the distance so much, but the time range around various airports, showing us which one we're always closest to. So EIKN is not, is it Shannon? Might be Shannon. And then I don't know why we have BIR. We should have BIKF, which is Reykjavik, which is actually a little tiny bit closer here. Sometimes the selection of airports, excuse me, a little bit odd. But there's going to come a point, ETP1 here, where we are then closer to this ETOPS airport. So if anything happens, it's faster and closer for us to go here than to go back. And then ETP2 is when it becomes closer from going to Iceland to go to Gander. And this factors in these ETP equal time points. That's the important factor, is the time point. It's not the distance is equal, it's how long it's going to take you to get there, because of course going westbound we're sailing into the wind. Notice that it's a fair bit closer between Gander and ETP2 here than it is between, this is not Reykjavik, I don't know what BIR is, but anyways, Iceland here. It's a fair bit closer to Gander because we'd be going into the wind, so it would take us longer to get this distance. So this distance, time-wise, is equal to this distance here. So that's the point where things become interesting. So as a transatlantic captain, you've got to be very aware of those ETPs, those equal time points. You've got to be very aware of them, and be very aware of when you've crossed them. Be very aware when even more than entering the ETOPS airspace itself, is be very aware of when you've crossed these equal time points, because if at any point if an emergency happens, and I've said this before in streams, you want to be prepared for every eventuality. If an emergency happens, you want to know whether you're before or after this point, because that is going to make an immediate decision of which airport you go direct to. You don't want to waste time turning towards the wrong airport. If there's an emergency and you're close to this point and you're close to the max range of that airport, you want to know immediately which airport to go to. So you want to make sure that you know where these equal time points are. And they're usually defined within the flight plan itself as well. Here it is, ETOPS information, ETP1, and it shows you exactly where it is. North 53, 48.5 degrees. North 53 degrees, 48.5 minutes, by west 27 degrees, 11.8 minutes. So you can use either one of those. This would probably be the better coordinate to watch for, when, because we're basically more or less westbound. We're crossing a lot of points of latitude, but we're only very slowly crossing. Sorry, we're crossing a lot of longitude, but we're only very slowly crossing these points of latitude. So we keep an eye on ourselves, and when we've crossed West 27, 11.8, then we know we're past that equal time point. Let's see if I can find position monitor. There we are. But What did I say it was? I've already forgotten. 2711.8. When you've crossed 2711.8, you've passed that first one. I think EuroControl is gone. I think at this point we can safely say EuroControl is gone. He's been offline for a good at least 5 minutes now, if not 10. Get that 31.7 back ready for Gander. We're on Unicom, and I think we're going to take a little break for now. Let's go ahead and say Adara, 1354. So we're going to come back, certainly at Adara, to check in with Gander, which is going to happen at about 1354. So we're going to come back, and I'm going to give myself a little time here, but we will be back no later than 1355 anyways to make that position report to Gander and enter the oceanic airspace. Until then, I'm just going to sign off for a little bit because I've been talking for 2.5 hours and I just need a little break. So we're going to step out of the flight deck, we're going to get something to drink. In the meantime, guys, thank you so much for watching. And we will be back in just a little bit. So thank you guys and stay tuned.
We're not even halfway.